Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the regular council meeting of Monday, December the 9th, 2024 at 7 p.m. I'd like to remind everyone that this meeting could be broadcast for public access and broadcasting purposes. With that, can I get a motion to adopt the agenda for this evening? So moved by Councillor Thorne, seconded by Councillor Bannister. Any questions to that motion? No questions, all in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded, motion carried. I'll remind anybody that there is conflict of interest forms in the middle of the table. If you do have any conflicts on anything on the agenda this evening, please fill that in and pass it into the clerk's office and with the reason. With that, let's move on to item number 4, adoption of the minutes from the regular council meeting of November the 12th, 2024. Do I have a motion to accept the minutes? So moved by Councillor Detory, seconded by Councillor Colwell. Questions to the motion? No questions to the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded, motion carried. Moving on to item number 2, committee of the whole meeting, November 25th, 2024. Do I have a motion to adopt? Moved by Councillor Blinas, seconded by Councillor Detory. Questions to the motion? No questions to the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded, motion carried. With that, we'll move on to item number 5, consent agenda items. You would have received those in your council package. Do I have a motion to accept the consent agenda? So moved by Councillor Bannister, seconded by Councillor Blinas. Questions to the motion? No questions to the motion. All in favor? Aye. Contrary minded, motion carried. With that, we'll move on to item number 6, public administration presentations. Item number 1, public hearing, rezoning 502 Sanatorium Road, PID 00956433. So with that, I'm going to read an opening statement. So welcome again, everyone. The next agenda item under section 6 is the public hearing for the public rezoning for PID 00956433. Before we begin, I would like to give our standard overview of the public hearing process and how the public hearing will be conducted. Purpose of this public hearing is to consider written objections, comments received regarding the proposed changes to the Westmoreland Albert Rural Plan. We will first have a short overview of any written submissions by Diane Ailes, the town clerk. Following this, we will have a presentation of the rezoning request from Jenna Stewart, one of the planners from the Southeast Regional Service Commission. We will then hear from any members of the public who have submitted written objections or comments or simply would like to comment on the bylaw in general. This will begin by first inviting the proponent, if in attendance, to add any information to supplement the presentations made. All of the presentations will be made at the podium and will not be done from the gallery. Afterwards, the members of the public in attendance will have the opportunity to speak in favor or against the proposed amendment. Please note a town staff member is circulated to sign-up list to speak at the start of the meeting. We will call speakers if any, in the order registered. If you have not added your name to the list, you will be invited to speak once all registered presenters have completed their presentation. Following the presentations, any of the proponents or objectors, the applicant will once again be provided the opportunity to address the council and provide any further information and or clarity. Any comments being presented must be related specifically to the bylaw and generally, and an individual will have the opportunity to speak once. At the end of each presentation, the members of council may ask for clarification from the speaker on a fact or issue, but the purpose is not to enter into a debate. This is not the time to question the members of council. Under the Community Planning Act, the purpose of the public hearing is for council to consider objections to the bylaw, and therefore discussion or argument involving members of council is inappropriate. There should be no interruptions while a person is making a presentation. Order must be maintained and minutes will be kept. When all presentations have been completed, the public hearing will close. Please note that the council does not make any decisions at the public hearing this evening. The intent of the public hearing, as mentioned, is for council to hear support, concerns, and questions related to the proposed amendments. Council thanks everyone for their interest and cooperation throughout this public hearing. The clerk will now give the overview of the submissions received by the town, and then we'll turn it over to Ms. Stewart for the presentation. Ms. Hales.
All right. So as per the Community Planning Act, council is required to hold a public hearing to consider written objections or comments received regarding the proposed changes to the Westmoreland Albert Rural Plan, providing the public the opportunity to speak for or against any proposed changes. The act also requires public notification. Public notification was published on the town's website, social media pages, as well as Plan 360's, which Southeast Regional Services Commission website, seeking public comments on proposed amendments and setting a date, timeline, and place for the public hearing. I believe also there was letters that went out possibly in a certain radius of the property, I believe. To date, the clerk's office has received 2 emails in support of the rezoning and 3 in opposition of the rezoning. 1 email in opposition was sent directly to a counselor with questions as well as to the clerk's office. Jenna, can you get over from here? So bear with me to get you up and running. Let's see if it'll work for you. And it didn't. There we go.
Yeah, well, really.
There we go. It's opposite to what you think. Oh,
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Jen Stewart. I'm a planner with Plan 360, and I will be presenting the proposed rezoning application for 502 Sanatorium. The proposal is to rezone this property from rural area, also called RA, to commercial industrial, also called CI, under the Westmoreland Albert Rural Plan, to permit a micro cultivation facility for cannabis production. This would be an indoor cannabis production facility. So with this, we considered policies related to both commercial and industrial, as it's a request vote of commercial industrial zone. For commercial, there's policies related to location of developments, as well as the nuisance they could create. Under industrial, there's also policies related to location and staying away from existing residential nodes. And there's also that the activity meets all federal, provincial legislation, setbacks, buffers, water and sewer system being approved provincially, and access to a suitable road. So this is the current zoning. It is, as mentioned, rural area. That is the light green. The yellow is the infill overlay zone. And these are the Westmoreland Albert planning area rural plan. So the reason for the request for the rezoning is in the rural area, outdoor cannabis production is what is permitted. The commercial industrial zone is the only one that permits indoor cannabis facility. So this is just an idea of the general location, highlighted in red on the zoomed in one, and the zoomed out, it's in the little blue line. So it is along Sanatorium Road. Middlesex Road is not too far down, and it's approximately 6.5 kilometers from downtown Salisbury as the crow flies. Here we have some site photos. So this is standing on the road, looking directly at the property. These were taken in October, so still had some greenery. And here is looking up and down the road from that property. So what is being proposed is an indoor microcultivation facility at approximately 30 feet by 50 feet is the building that's been proposed. It meets all zoning requirements, that's setbacks, parking, everything else you mentioned within the zoning with this proposed site plan. So we did reached out to provincial departments as well as municipal departments. No concerns were heard back in those comments. I did want to flag and highlight one from the environmental impact assessment branch that they do not require environmental impact assessment for this project. I'll also just point out, so there's no confusion, there was no concerns from Petitcodiac Fire, as Petitcodiac Fire is the one responsible for that area of Sanatorium Road. So this is the proposed bylaw in a draft format now. It has 3 conditions. One is the development shall be in general conformity with the site plan and parking plan. The second is that the tree buffer is maintained as per attachment schedule 2A, which I will show in a minute. And that the main use is limited to an indoor micro cultivation cannabis operation as per Health Canada guidelines and licensing. So the side one is this Schedule A, this shows the property. And then Schedule A2 shows the tree buffer as well as the site and parking. So getting in, again, back into a bit of the discussion, 502 Sanatorium is not located in an existing residential node. It is in a rural area. The applicant is proposing a building that is 30 feet by 50 feet. Therefore, this is not a large industrial project. This is a small scale indoor facility. Health Canada does issue license for cannabis, and they do have their own requirements in areas such as security. They also have limits on size of production, and et cetera. The applicant has indicated plans for odor control within this facility that include carbon filters. They have outlined predicted water consumption, which was shared with EIA and all the other departments, so they were aware of that when they made their comments. There is anticipated minimal traffic as it's not a sales location. The applicant has stated they anticipate 2 to 3 employees, which would be going daily, and then every 2 to 3 months, 1 larger truck for delivery. And as mentioned, an outlined tree buffer using existing trees on that lot. No comments raised concerns during the consultation process, as mentioned, and overall staff are supportive of. Considering all this, staff are supportive of this application as it's outside existing residential nodes. It falls in line with the policies outlined earlier, and having an indoor facility does give that added layer of having a bit more control over odor compared to an outdoor production. This did go to the Southeast Planning Review and Adjustment Committee. They received all the same information. And they did put forward a recommendation that the town of Salisbury adopt the bylaw with the conditions mentioned. So for letters, there was notification on the town website on October 31st. Property owners within 100 meters received written notifications. These were sent out on November 12th, so prior to the strike. It's hard to see here, but there is a dotted line there showing the 100-meter buffer. As Diane mentioned, there was 3 letters of objection and 2 written in support. To highlight the general comments from those, concerns were related to odor and industrial development. And for the support, those letters were generally supportive of new economic opportunities for the community. So as for timeline and process, we are now at the public hearing phase, which is a requirement of the Community Planning Act, requiring council to hold a public hearing for these types of amendments to give the public an opportunity to speak. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'd like now to invite the applicant Ryan Sleever to the podium in attendance.
Right, thanks, town council for just hearing the proposal. So the biggest issues with what I'm seeing and hearing through Facebook and stuff is the odor control. So we are gonna use carbon filters in all the processing areas. The grow rooms are actually gonna be closed cell foam insulation, so it adds like a vapor barrier, airtight to the grow rooms. We pay a lot of money for heat and CO2, and we don't wanna lose any of that. So the building's gonna be very airtight. The only places in the building that are gonna have fresh air come in and out would be like a staff room and the office. And those rooms will be scrubbed with carbon filter before any air gets pulled out of the building. So as for smell, that's how we're gonna mitigate the smell. And this is not Organigram. This is a small 1,500 square foot building. Organigram is 550,000 square feet. So comparing the two smell wise, it's not even comparable. There's other micro cultivations that work in closer limits to the road and such. There's actually one out in Memory Cook, I believe it's only about 30 feet away from the road. I'm proposing to really put the building kind of back up in the woods, out of the way, we're surrounded by trees, so no one has to see it. And that's pretty much everything. Thanks, guys.
Any questions you can answer? I guess I have one question.
Yeah.
Sorry. With the carbon filters,
Yeah.
what is the expectation there will be no detectable odor outside the building, or will it be small? Or?
It would probably be very small. I don't want to say none because it's producing cannabis at the end of the day, but we're gonna do everything to mitigate the smell. There's more than just carbon filters. There's air ionizers that we currently test out. Like I have a small little medical grow in my garage and none of my neighbors smell. Like it takes the smell away from it. So we'll be using all those to mitigate the smell.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Do you have any intent on building another one if this one's approved?
Probably not. We're just trying, this is my friend here, Brandon. It's gonna be just small family operated. The land doesn't, like, there's no other room on the land with the distances I've given between the building and the perimeters to add another building, so it'll just be one building.
Thank you very much.
I'm sorry, I have one other question. So I know this was mentioned at the last meeting, but can you share with us the anticipated water that will be used?
Yeah, so under like 700 liters a day approximately. We also have the ability through dehumidifiers, like the air conditioners, the dehumidifiers, they pick up all this extra water in the room. We have the ability to drain that water to a tank, reuse that water, filter it and reuse it. At home, I reclaim about 60 to 70% of my water. So that's a possibility too. It's just
So is that an intention of yours to do that?
Yeah, it's just, yeah, we'll have to get those filters and set up. I'm in the early stages, right? I'm just trying to get it through, but yes, eventually that's exactly what we do. Try to just reclaim the water. It shouldn't have a big demand on any wells or anything out there. We don't use giant pots or very small pots.
You okay?
Yep.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. With that, I'd like to invite proponents or objectors to the podium in the order in which they're registered. And I'll take the list and call each individual up one by one. And remind everyone that only speaking from the podium is allowed this evening. With that, we have Aaron Butland Clark. Let's register to speak.
So I don't have like a presentation.
That's okay. You know what? We're very informal
Just
here.
very-
Just the podium to speak.
I just have a few questions
Sure.
to in regards to it, like we bought a piece of land on far from there, it's like 200 and some meters away, it's profiles, so. The odor was one of my concerns, and then the filters on. I know it's not the size of organic gram, but organic gram didn't start size that it is now, even the air filters, that's it. It's concerning because we paid a fair amount of money for the land we bought to eventually build a house. Did a lot of work to the land, and now it's like, I'm not sure if this goes through, I actually want to live there. Does this open up a corridor now for commercial industrial? Like there's woodlots. Did they, you had sent out notices to the surrounding properties, which I believe 4 of them are woodlots and one's a camp. So no actual residents in that area. I'm just wondering.
It's a good question for you. I might be able to answer that. I'll stay here so you can say other things and have more.
Was it just the 4 woodlots and the camp that was notified by?
So within 600 meters, there were 6 letters sent out. There was, as it is not an existing residential node, it was noted that there is woodlots there and building lots that haven't been built on yet.
Did you say 600 meters or 100?
100 meters, we had 6 letters go out within that 100 meters, including the property owner of 502.
What constitutes a residential node?
So an existing residential node, I don't have a map up here, but they are zoned R residential. So usually it's when you have houses that are closer together, there are zoned.
City block.
not quite a city block. We do have pockets in rural areas that are considered residential nodes. For this consideration, this was not considered one, as within 100 meters, we weren't encountering houses. You have to go 250, so that was showing that this is a rural area. Housing is separated, so it's not a residential node where you see a higher density or concentration of buildings.
So can anybody rezone any property? Like apply to rezone any property
Yes.
anywhere?
So rezonings, yes, you can apply to rezone. Staff provide a recommendation, and it does have to go through this process. So that includes an introduction to see if council will entertain the idea by letting it go through the process.
Right.
It goes to, in this case, it would go to the Southeast Planning Review and Advisory Committee. They provide their recommendation on it based on staff report, but it is up to that committee to decide their stance on it, provide a recommendation to council, public hearing, and then there are 3 readings that have to take place afterwards. So it is, while you can apply to rezone properties, it is quite a process to go through. In this case, for our rural area to commercial industrial, it's to have it indoor, as rural area only permits outdoor.
Which could happen to the,
Yes, so in the rural area, outdoor production is permitted as of right without terms and conditions, so it would just go through the permit phase. There would be no extra steps involved in that.
We would only be allowed so many plants.
That would be Health Canada's.
It'd be whatever the license is.
Depending on the license that's acquired.
Okay, so I'm kind of under the understanding, I guess, like most people are, that zoning clustered like minded development together. So like you would have your industrial area over here, you'd have your residential area over here.
that's true,
And-
that's true in
And
the
if
city.
you were trying to expand your commercial, then you might look at rezoning like the edge of.
Yeah, in this case, we often do see more like commercial industrial nodes. In this case, we're not looking at developing a new node. It's the specific project that the applicant is after requires this zone. And after staff review, we were supportive of it. In this case, every rezoning is looked at individually on a case-by-case basis. So this rezoning, should it go through, doesn't guarantee that if the person next door applied, that would go through. That would be a new process, a new case.
But it would make more likely this.
Everyone's done by case-by-case basis. So I can't speak to that aspect.
I think the short answer is if someone across the street or next door wanted to rezone it for the same purpose, they could apply.
Yes.
Just at the same point, though, they can rezone anywhere in downtown commercial as well.
No,
It's anywhere.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, but just to, in order, in terms of just,
Yeah, it's a process available to you.
Yeah.
You may not be able to apply, or may not get through, but you can apply anywhere.
And it's still only.
There, for the written notification, for rezoning, it's 100 meters, but we also do put it on, the town website.
Have they looked at like expanding that for rural areas so that it's a broader scope? So it actually encompasses like.
For rural areas, 100 meters is the expanded, within, urban areas, it's 60 meters. So we do expand, but for rezonings, our best practices, regardless of where it is, to 100 meters.
And I think we had on that too, Jenna, I'll jump in just because this was also mentioned at the last rezoning that we had in the summertime when council was considering one in the, what we would call the downtown core, going from a residential to VC in our case, so village center. And we had the same question, and those are what you see from in every municipality. Some have what they generally call enhanced notification policies or procedures, which are municipal specific. And that was something that council mentioned at that point, that when we consolidate, right now we have 2 kind of zoning basically guides. One is the former village zoning bylaw municipal plan. The second one is the work that we're dealing with this evening, so the Westmoreland Albert rural plan. And when those are consolidated in the coming months, That was something that was mentioned, and maybe we look at municipally something for what most would call an enhanced notification piece. Just to ensure consistency, because at that point in the summer, it was raised, I think, by Councillor Bannister, what happens if this is outside of kind of the downtown core? And that was the response, was that there's those legislated amounts so that it's consistent on each case. And generally, when you're in the rural areas, like it was mentioned, a lot of the people don't necessarily live there, so it's less effective than the online ones more, which are kind of what the approach we've taken. But that's definitely something that's being discussed above and beyond, but that will be consistent unless a municipality has what they call a version of what they call an enhanced notification process.
Thank you very much. All right, I'd now like to ask any other members of the audience tonight if they wish to address council on this matter. If you do, please raise your hand. We'll get you added to the list. And we'll do it in the order that you raised hands.
We can just write them here.
So we had 3 people raise their hands. Please raise your hands again. We'll, thank you.
You wanna go first now?
Yeah.
And who, was it you that had your hand up? What was your name, sorry? Sharon? What's her name? Scott Trim.
Good, you're.
Ah, oh, Karen, perfect. Thanks. Oh, what's your name, sorry?
Band back up.
Clark?
Still has it. It's not always worked out that way.
Okay. All right, thank you very much. I'd just like to remind everyone that you may only address from the podium. Please no comments from the gallery during anybody's talks. With that, I will call on Craig Smith to come to the podium, please. Thank you, Craig.
Good evening. I recently purchased a farm that is just across the river from where you are. I understand now that it's a small operation, I guess, so. I guess my question, I didn't hear anything about your wastewater. Any pesticide usage or chemicals or any of that sort, well, like how do you deal with that?
So actually what we'll do
At
is,
the end, yeah.
we'll at the end, we'll gather all the questions and that way through all the proponents that come up, we'll have you addressing one, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
So that is one question I had. I guess another question, just to propose in general, not that I'm really expecting an answer, but would any of you be comfortable living next to this property?
Absolutely. Me, this is no different than any other.
It's not a matter of debate this evening.
Well, I understand the debate, but I'll give my commentary on it if I'm allowed to. Me, this is no different than any other agricultural production. Whether you like or dislike the marijuana aspect of it, that's up for debate. But putting a 30 by 50 barn up and having a smell coming from a barn, it's the same concept.
Same concept difference, but anyway, we're not into debate. That was just my question I had here. And so the wastewater, and I was curious to know the height of the building. I heard the square footage, but I didn't hear a height, if there was a.
So we'll make note of that, Craig, and we'll get the answer for that. Appreciate it.
Well, water was discussed. I don't think I have any other questions. I just was concerned about pesticide and wastewater, because I didn't hear anything on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Craig, appreciate it. With that, we'll call Janet Smith to podium.
Hi, my question was would any of you, and I'm not looking for an answer, want to live within 100 meters, yards, feet, whatever it was that you said, of this facility? I don't know that anybody, if put it in the middle of Parkin Street, Larson, in that area, I don't know if anybody would like that. I don't like that I just bought a 330 acre farm this close by, and that now this is being proposed. And it looks like it's already been decided, but anyway, the question. Let's see after that. That was my original question and Craig asked it, so.
If you think of it, she can come back.
If you think about it again, you can come back at the end. It's not,
Okay, I'll do that.
no worries. Thank you.
Sharon Beers.
Beers, yeah.
Sharon,
Sharon Beers?
That's my writing, sorry.
Better than mine.
I'd just like to say that, that area is a residential area. I don't care how it's zoned. There's a whole lot of houses right nearby where they're proposing to do that. And they've been there for years. And I know all those families that are living close by there. And, I'm concerned because, I just live up the road from where they're proposing that project. And, I am concerned about the draw on people's wells, if it's gonna affect anybody's wells. I am concerned about that, and I am concerned about odor, and I am concerned, like that other gentleman said, about what they're gonna do about wastewater and how that's gonna affect nearby properties. And I'd just like to say that, there are people right in the immediate area that have small farms. And they have animals on those farms, and they also have young children. And I just don't think, to me, that in a residential area like this, it's a good place for it. I don't mean to be negative or anything like that. And I myself just built a new house there, just up the road at 430 3 years ago. And I'm concerned about having something like that there. That's gonna devalue anybody's property that's close around there. You fellows can say whatever you want. I know the difference. It's gonna devalue their property. And, I don't know why there's not more people here because, just across the road from me, I live at 430. There's, Jean Steves' residence right next door to her. There's, the culprit's house. And I think his grandson's living there in that house now. There's a house right next door, and then there's the McLeod house. And, then a gentleman just bought, the place just next door to Selden McLeod, and he's planning to build a new home there. And I know, this girl, has purchased a lot right there on the Middlesex Road, just like almost across the street from where that's gonna be. And we were up there for a drive and we talked to the gentleman up next from that. He's building a brand new house. He's a professor was living in Newfoundland and retired. He's building a brand new house there. I mean, he doesn't want it. I don't blame him, and I know she wouldn't, she doesn't want it, and those people have done considerable amount of work on that property already. But these people don't have any money involved with it. This little girl here has spent a lot of money already, and she's nearly in tears over it, and I don't blame her. I wouldn't wanna have it. Would you like to build your house across the street from that? I don't think so. If any is told the truth, no, you wouldn't. So I don't think it's a good idea, and that is a residential area. And if you want me to go all around and tell you who everybody is there, I will. There's many houses around, right in that immediate district. So it's a residential area, and so far, that's all that's there. And there's children there. Little children. And I don't think that's anything we need in the backyard. That's all I had to say, but I am concerned. Like that gentleman said, the wastewater, the draw on people's wells. There's a lot of people who have wells around that area. And how does that mean to affect their wells?
Can you answer the questions?
Not until the end.
It So that's what I had to say. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you. Scott Trenum. Oh, I guess Janet, yep.
Thanks.
So just record Janet's come back to the podium.
Like I said, my first one was, would you want it near your home? And my next, just food for thought is, would you now, if you were to purchase in the Riverglade area, would you purchase land within 100 yards or 1,000 yards of this proposed facility? And the other thing is, not one person out there moves out there to not want the clean air and the away from city stuff, industrial, anything. Everybody moves out for the country, look, feel, smell, everything. And I would not have bought this 330 acre farm had I known this was a potential. And that's just on me, I know. So at the end of the day, if we could, I didn't know about this until just recently. Can we go around to all of the people in Riverglade and the people that work at the Jordan home and such? And can we interview them, ask them, can I head up a committee of sorts and find out what people want in that area? And see where that goes. That's just a potential. Again, would any of you, if you were to want to build, would you go there now? And if it does smell, if there is pesticide, you know, if there's testing and there's problems that we're concerned with, if it goes through and there's problems that we're concerned with that is being addressed today or talked about today. The smell, for example, if that carbon filters and whatever, if that doesn't work and people are concerned, is there a space for that? Is there a time frame once it's up and running for concerns like that to be addressed? And is that a long year process or 6 months or, you know, I don't know anything about this, but is this, sometimes things can get, you know, long and drawn out, but is this something that can be addressed and fixed? And if it can't be fixed, can it be shut down? Those sorts of questions that we don't know the answers to. I appreciate your time with my memory. I know being here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Appreciate your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Scott Trenum.
All right, thank you all. So I've got a bit of a bias here because I'm the father-in-law here, but I just a few things I want to add as context. Appreciate the passion, obviously, that everyone has around this. The same passion these guys have to come to your community to do this. It's important to know that we just bought land on Mullins Road, so we plan on bringing our families here with more kids right to the school and things. So this is a very technical solution. Dashboards monitored, very regulated. So as far as the smell, you don't have to worry about coming because it's monitored and regulated and they will shut it down, right? This is very, very, I work for a financial institution. There are no steps around this. They will monitor and deal with it and shut it down if it comes. The other thing is, you know, we came prepared with everything and met the timelines. So I think others should have as well if they had concerns. And lastly, this is all legal. This is not something that we're trying to do out of the norm, and those type of things. So we followed all the letters of law as we would if this gets approved. So just wanted to add that context. So thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Matt, is that Matt Clark?
Yes. Yes.
Sorry, Matt. Sorry, Matt.
Basically, as my wife Erin said, we bought land out there with plans to build our forever home. Kind of disappointed about this. It's pretty close as it applies to us. I understand it's a small facility, but there is other vacant land around there. And I guess while I share all the same concerns everybody else does, the smell, the wells, the wastewater, those are all valid concerns and I share those. I understand it's a small operation, but I also understand once you get making a bunch of money and you wanna buy the piece next to you and the piece next to you. And you're only one piece away from me watching your trucks come and go when I'm sitting on my front porch. And, that would be very disappointing to have worked my whole life to finally get the place I wanna be. And that's right in my front yard. So, I just want to make my concerns known because if it's okay for this, then it's okay for the piece of land next to it, but if it's land next to it. So,
Thanks, Matt. All right, with that, I'll ask the applicant, Ryan Sleever. Oh, sorry, is there any, sorry, I'll just, is there anybody else that didn't get on the list that after hearing different things they'd like to address council? We do want to make sure we give everybody the opportunity. So. Okay, with that, Ryan, you can come forward and address. We'll go through, I mean, obviously we can start with, Craig had some questions to begin with, I think. Wastewater, pesticides.
So wastewater, it's gonna be a septic system, septic field. We actually don't spray pesticides or use any pesticides, it's all beneficial predators. So it's like insects that we put in there to fight off bad bugs when there is bugs. There's no pesticides ever sprayed. The one thing we use is an essential oil, and it goes on the plants, and it's friendly. The wastewater, it's just a septic system is what we've been quoted, but this is in the early stages. I haven't gone through anything, so we just started.
Wastewater and
Height of the building.
height of the building.
So, it's probably, we're looking between 10 and 12 foot ceilings, and then upstairs, we're using like a barn style kind of upstairs, so that there's a little bit of square footage for storage and stuff upstairs. It's like 1,500 square feet to the base of the building, but upstairs, so we can have some storage to put stuff. So I forget what's called, a gambler roof, I believe, but anyway, it's kind of like a shape of a barn up top. What's the question?
Right, is that
Well water.
well water?
Well water, so that's, well water consumption is gonna be low because we have the ability to recycle approximately 65 to 70% of the water that the plants put off. So through air conditioners, through the dehumidifiers, that can all get recycled into a giant tote. We'll filter that water, we'll feed it again, we'll top the water up as needed.
The on water too, just so we have the numbers, the planning report says between 378 and 568 as specific numbers per day in average water usage. I just pulled up our most recent one as a comparison. We don't have, to my knowledge, any water studies as detailed as we've had for some projects here lately, but the most recent one that council's considered had 10,300 liters per day for that one application.
Those were the specific questions from the gallery. I don't think there's any specific to data. Were there any questions outside the generalized, obviously living in the area?
We can maybe address the question on just process and notification. I think I addressed that 100-meter buffer and the process behind that. I think the very similar response to what we provided in the summer. There was a question as to why we mailed versus going door to door. In this case, I would compare that to trying to get more information on either those for or against a particular rezoning, if I were to compare apples to apples. I think we have to, as we process rezonings, have to follow the Community Planning Act as a must, like that's a given. And that process outlines that province-wide, right? There's a piece of provincial legislation that dictates that. I mentioned the enhanced notification piece that can come into play. There are the committees, which is the PRAC, the Planning Review and Adjustment Committee, which considers it and is arm's length from municipality and makes a recommendation to council, which Jenna mentioned was done in November. I don't remember the date, but in November. And then council's provided the opportunity to hear concerns or support from the public in this setting or in writing as we have as well. And that's generally the process that we follow. I think we're considering another rezoning this week. We have another one. And again, if I go back to my rationale of the consistency is important, because then it calls into question the consistency of one application over the other, and what is done for one over the other, which is why the Community Planning Act exists, I would say, but why it's important to follow it to a T. So that I would say would be our clarification on notification process. I don't know if you have anything to add, Jenna, you would know that process better than I, but that's the town's position, I would say, on that.
I think I see touched on everything. It's a general notification process, with the requirement to go on the town website is the big one, and then our best practice is to also mail in the letters. Within
Yes, and so the question on, there was one also just on after the fact. I think it was partially addressed just with one of those, with one of the speakers, just in terms of what the applicant would do. I don't know if you want to add more on that in terms of how you'll regulate smell, but Jenna, do you want to speak on the, I would say, I don't want to use the word enforcement, but the enforcement side. So I think the only conditions right now in the bylaw primarily are related to following the site plan. There's no necessarily way to ensure compliance with odor control. Is that correct?
Health Canada actually has quite stringent regulations that we have to follow. Just to even get the application going, they want carbon filters in all these rooms. This is from Health Canada. This isn't something I'm just putting in to even get the application going. That's part of
So
it.
they are the ones that would.
They come to a facility inspection. It's very highly regulated. This is not just thrown together.
Councilor Cole?
I have a few questions. I don't know if it's okay. if I ask.
That's the time.
That was one of them, was just if you could explain if Health Canada addresses any of the concerns you're hearing today, because to my knowledge as well, I did some Google research, which is not always the best, but I know there's a huge regulation on that side. So this is one side of it, but what's the, like, what are the requirements, I guess, just to kind of make
And
it more
frequency.
clear, because we're not talking about.
Yeah, I don't know exactly the requirements, but having smell mitigation is a giant thing. It doesn't necessarily say I have to have like 10 carbon filters in the room, but there has to be smell mitigation. Like I said, there's more than just carbon filters. That's just at the time what I put in the application. We're gonna use air ionizers that work really good too. It just fills the ions in the air essentially that can with smell. It eliminates it.
Can I just ask all the ones I have?
Absolutely.
I know, I noticed you're shaking your head when somebody had mentioned about the, the number of plants outdoor versus indoor. I assume you know the answer to like that property.
Yeah, so it's, right now it's zoned as a rural property, so, I don't have to go through the rezoning to do outdoor cannabis production there. I could just put up a fence essentially and there's not really a plant count limit. It goes on like a square meter, like how much land I have, how many plants I can put out there. So there's not actually like 300 plants or something. It'd be based on that size of the lot.
And how many can you put in your facility?
It goes off of a square footage, it's 200 square meters of canopy right now. And some people, they use bigger pots on the table, so they'll have less plants in the room, whereas we use smaller pots, we have like more plants, but yeah, it's actually a canopy size. It's not a plant count.
I also will just jump in, with the rural area, outdoor is as of right, they would need a permit. For change of use, but yes, there would be none of this process involved in that.
And I'll jump in again, process wise, because it happened to us recently, which we didn't know was part of the process. But as soon as Health Canada issues a license, the municipality is notified. So we had another case where an outdoor production facility was issued a license. And we were made aware through that notification process, which is part of the licensing. So when they get to the point of being issued the license, they have to notify, there's a few different kind of stakeholders involved, fire departments, police, and municipal authorities. And in this case, it's serviced. We have an agreement with another municipality to service that area, similar to this with Petitcodiac, but in another area of the town boundaries. And we made sure that those fire departments were aware of that sort of thing. So there's also a municipal notification, even if it's aside from the permits, there's something else there.
And my last question I think I have for now is, that, cause I know we talked about, like, one of the residents talked about the, like, monitoring this stuff. So is it an annual renewal with
Yes.
Health Canada? And then-
It's once a year, it's a renewal. There's also, me and Brendan have to go through extensive security clearances to get this license.
Okay, so fair to assume, if, I'm not saying it will, but if this went forward, Health Canada could shut you down.
Yeah, if we don't follow the rules, absolutely. Yeah, they come in once a year for an audit and it's an unexpected audit. Maybe they give us a couple days heads up, but they just pop in and make sure we're following the rules to their standards.
You mentioned Memorial Cook had a facility maybe closer, well, not, doesn't have the setback that you have.
Yeah.
What's been the experience or how big is that operation and, if you don't know, it's
It's
fine.
bigger than the operation I'm willing to propose by the building size, honestly, and what we're proposing to do is just to grow the cannabis. We're not gonna sell it, we actually sell it to another company and they bring it to market. We're a cultivation only facility, there's no production of the cannabis there, there's no processing exactly, like we're not packaging it or putting it into oils or anything like that, we grow it. And then it gets sold to another company and they put it in a package.
Any additional questions for council? No additional questions. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. So with that, I want to thank everybody for participation this evening. As mentioned, council does not make any decisions this. Are you? If you end up, Jen?
Can I say something again and, or no, is it too late?
You should kind of.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah. Again, we want to give everybody the opportunity to do it. I do want to be clear because an individual tonight mentioned that they felt it was already a decision was made when I am closing this. There's been no decision made, there'll be no decision made this evening. This is what this public hearing is all about, to gather all the information.
Okay, thank you. I just noticed all the heads nodding with certain parties, that's all. So that's why, that was the reason for my statement. And so we've been a town, meaning from a village to a town in less than a year, and now we're already being proposed industrial companies. And I also have 85 acres right here in Salisbury, right, actually close to Mullins Drive. So if that's of interest to you, it might be something that we could talk about.
Pretty deep in here.
I'm just saying, like, that, I have that space and.
There you go. For some wheeling and dealing.
Within walking distance of your father-in-law, pardon me?
You just need to say you're wheeling and dealing.
Wheeling and dealing.
Well, I'm just saying,
I
like,
know.
it just entered my mind. I have 330 acres there because I wanted to get out of Salisbury. I wanted to get into the country more. And so that's just an offer.
Thank you, Janet.
I do have one question.
Okay, please, right from the podium, please.
I'm just curious, when we would know what the decision is? Or like how we would know, or when we would know?
Don't answer that.
I mean,
Oh, yeah.
obviously, we'll talk about it closing, but
It makes a difference to my future
Absolutely.
plans.
First and second reading, I mentioned we had another rezoning on the go as well this week, so that public hearing is scheduled for a special council meeting on Thursday. And the intent will be to have, first and second reading on the agenda for that meeting on Thursday. Council will have that opportunity to ask any additional clarifying questions. If they choose not to proceed, then it's decided Thursday, like then and there. If they choose to proceed on Thursday, that doesn't mean it's done because it's only first and second reading. So then after that, third reading would happen, which would either be on our special meeting on December 30th, or if on Thursday, if there's follow-ups that we have to do or something, and they don't do that, and let's say they do first and second reading on December 30th, it will be our next council meeting in January, which is, I want to say the 13th, I think, the second Monday of January. So it would be no earlier than December 30th, and give or take, depending on council's decision this Thursday when it's back on the agenda for the formal first and second readings. I'll just, if I can, clarify one piece just on the with the last, additional question on, the town considering a rezoning. I think we've used this in another instance, but this is part of the reason that the province undertook municipal reform, because prior to municipal reform, there was no local body of elected officials being council to consider these rezonings, which causes challenges for people to make sure that they have an opportunity to have their say for or against. And I mentioned that consolidation update, which council is starting to have one overall municipal plan and zoning bylaw, which will happen. Other municipalities that underwent similar, and I would say more complicated changes during reform with existing municipal entities that merged with the rural plan, have undertaken that process in our region. So we're just getting ready to start those conversations, but is not abnormal to consider one-offs, but the consolidation process needs to happen, so there are less one-offs and it's less of the separation between the former village and the Westmoreland Alberta rural plan. So I just wanted to make sure we clarified that as well, because it is an important distinction to make.
Yeah, it's a very important distinction because these things were occurring before amalgamation did take place. And in this case, all the individuals here this evening do have that opportunity to come forward and present to a council, where that didn't necessarily always take place in the past before this, so, for sure. You know what, again, we're trying to, give everybody the opportunity. If you have any additional, before I do my closing statement, please feel free to come up. In the meantime, you can certainly reach out to the office, ask any questions. We want to help as much as we can. Okay, with that, I'd like to thank everybody for your participation. Again, the council's not made any decisions on this matter this evening. First and second reading of the proposed amendment will be on the agenda for the special council meeting scheduled for this Thursday, December the 12th at 7 p.m. as our CAO had mentioned. At this time, council will determine if they will proceed, if they have any further questions, or if amendments will not proceed. With that, I now declare the public hearing complete. We'll now be moving on to our next order of business on this evening's agenda. Well, thank you, everybody, by the way, for that portion of it. If you'd like to stick around for all of the fun and thrilling stuff for the next part of the meeting, so you're certainly welcome to stay.
I should have brought my hat, I know that.
Okay, thank you very much. If you are leaving, please drive safely. With that, we'll move on to item number 7, reports and recommendations from committees and private meetings.
Do we need a recess?
Do we need a recess for any council members?
You would like that?
So we need a motion. We'll have a motion with Councilor Tory, second by Councilor Thorne. Questions to the motion? All in favor? Aye. We'll now enter into a recess. All right, can I have a motion to enter back into the regular council meeting? So now, by Councilor Colwell, second by Councilor Thorne. Questions to the motion? No questions, all in favor?
Aye.
I'm reminded, we are now back into the regular council meeting. We'll move on to item number 7, reports and recommendations from committees and private meetings.
Nothing this evening.
Nothing this evening. We'll move on to reports from administration, 2025 operating budget ratification.
Didn't pull it up, that's okay.
I have it, I just. Come on, little man. I did have it.
Nice sunset. Whose sunset is that?
It's a sunrise.
What's a
Not open.
Well, I don't know if
It's
it's
just
east or
low.
west.
Yeah.
No, it's a beautiful 6 o'clock in the morning.
Oh, it's a real photo? I thought it was one
Yes,
of
it's
those.
my photo.
Oh, I thought it was
I
just
thought
one
it
of
was
those.
Microsoft with the background.
Bienvenue à Trois-Ruisseaux. It's not coming up.
Is it in the, yeah, if you open that, no, yeah,
So I did, and it didn't. Oh,
I was thinking about it. I think that's.
Are there any highlights we could talk about?
Yeah, I can start. it's not, a lot of it is a refresher of what we covered at the November 12th meeting after Remembrance Day. So I can run through it. The intent of the presentation is just to give a bit more context before we ratify the 2025 operating budget and the 2025 utility or wastewater budget. The other elements that we're doing this evening are a number of motions to ratify the 5-year capital plan, the 5-year CCBF or Canada Community Building Fund plan, and also provide direction to staff more formally on a couple of items for future budget years as well as part of this ratification. So we presented these numbers in November, but in 2025 there's a tax base of about 860 million, which is our value for taxation. 16.87%. This number is new from November, but 16.87% of residential properties in 2025 are in spike protection mechanism, so SPM, which essentially leaves a difference of about 127 million in real and true value. So there's value for taxation, which is what we collect our warrants, or the province collects the warrant for us on, and then there's the real and true value for taxation. So that has to do with the spike protection mechanism, which is affecting 16.87% of properties in 2025. In 2024, that number was almost the same numbers, but in different order. So it was 18 point something percent. So it is still quite high. As a recap, we had a working session with council in early fall. There was a presentation made at the November regular council meeting, and we're proposing ratification this evening. There are a number of delays. Generally, this is done by mid-November due to the provincial election being held and the province being what they call caretaker mode and not releasing tax base assessments, which then has a trickle-down effect to not releasing RCMP numbers and not releasing cost of assessment, which we have been receiving over the last couple of weeks. Obviously it is pending ratification this evening, and then subsequent to that, it then gets sent to the province for formal, I was going to say ink on paper, but I don't think they do that anymore. Formal approval via click of a button with the new budget portal now. An overview by service area. That's okay if it doesn't load.
It was open before.
I'll keep going through it. They'll have to listen to me instead. So an overview by service area. We went through this at our November meeting. There are slight tweaks here and there, mostly due to the final numbers being inputted for things like cost of assessment. There were some proposed increases for certain events that were added. And the main change is that with the finalized warrant, we were able to add additional funds to the residential incentive program, which means that the environmental planning and development service goes up by about that amount, by about 50,000. So overall, some of the general highlights that we would like to give, if these kind of numbers were up there, is just the protective services assumes 30% of the operating budget in 2025. That's nothing new year over year. The RCMP number used to take about that same amount of the total operating budget, RCMP alone. So that is protective services overall. RCMP, fire, EMO, and bylaw enforcement is within that 30%. Year over year, if you look, the main differences are in transportation, which looks to go down because that's reallocated to fiscal costs, which looks like it sees a big jump. So fiscal costs is where our operating to capital dollars are all centralized now, versus this year our capital projects are in different service areas, which makes it look like they go way over budget. So we'll be able to track that more efficiently. And also the transportation goes down because some costs from that are now in fiscal costs. So resurfacing, and this year there was also a capital purchase that was in there initially. Just some quick highlights. I just mentioned one, but our capital budget is in fiscal services, which includes a 656,000 and change contribution from our operating budget to our capital budget, the remainder being paid for by miscellaneous grants, essentially. Just to give you an idea of that and our focus on capital projects, just if I use that broad umbrella, is that amount is about just over 30% of the total operating budget of the former village in 2022. So it's a large dollar value there. The former LSD subunit rate, we mentioned this at the November meeting, used to share at 90% of proportionate costs. In the proposed budget pending ratification, it's at 78%, which is, at that point, we were seeking direction from council, and the province essentially leaves that discretion up to local councils. Which to maintain the rate, that was the number that kind of hit that magic spot. That may change, more than likely will change year over year, so it will not always stay 78. It will not always stay 90. And we give that caveat just because one of the elements that we're proposing direction on this evening is to merge the former LSD subunits, which means that will change regardless. There are inflationary increases across the board, but some of the net new services or programs, I infer to this one as well, but the residential development incentive program, we've been able to allocate 150,000 instead of 100 towards that for next year, which is on the docket to be ratified in the early new year. The regional waste collection is now showing in a different area, basically. So all of our waste collection costs are now showing elsewhere because we're opting into a regional collection model. Also on the concept of waste is circular materials. That shows a revenue line that was not there historically. It wasn't there for our 2024 budget, but is on our 2024 books. We started getting funding in May, I want to say, May or June. There is maintaining the budget for the storefront beautification grant, and that will also roll out mid next year. There's also funding for tree planting program and for a neighborhood watch program as well. As council requested, we've increased the community grant program up to 50,000, which I think this year was 35. And so there's an increase there to address the fact that there are increasing demands, but also more multi-year agreements that eat up that budget quicker. Increased event programming. Halloween was raised in particular for an increase at the last meeting, so that is increased beyond what was recommended by staff initially. And then we've also been able to add a little bit to the general events budget, which is used as a catch-all when events come up and certain things are not purchased or they want to enhance it in one way or another. There's some room there. We've maintained the 1.7 times non-residential ratio. So in 2022, going into 2023, the province provided the ability to adjust the non-residential rate between 1.4 and 1.7 times the residential rate. And then, as directed by council, we've maintained all the tax rates in the subunits for 2025. The next slide just covered some of the capital projects. No different elements added to the projects for next year than were presented in November, and no different than was proposed when it was discussed earlier in the fall. There are some that have basically been deferred to future years just based on funding confirmations that we have, or I should say have not gotten. So those will be deferred, but remain in future years using CCBF dollars, and we'll continue to pursue others. The real one that's been deferred is the sludge removal at the treatment plant for the utility. But some of the other ones that we're eager to get to next year in particular is Roxborough Court and Spring Garden. So we're starting that kind of conceptual work to then be able to engage residents, probably not before the holidays, but in the early new year to see what that space can be, which is where we hold our, I'm on slide, the one that says capital projects, right, yeah. Yeah, what that space can accommodate and what residents would like to see there, which we're eager to get started on. We expect to do work over 2 years for that. There's some resurfacing projects in the mix, including a little bit more on Main Street under the PMHP program. We're in the design phase for extending sidewalk and resurfacing a portion of McDonald Road. And there's also, as part of a developer agreement, an asphalt wearing surface on Eco Ridge. On top of that, the rest is one that was deferred from this year that was supposed to close tomorrow, now closes on Thursday for the municipal building, and then some others that have been on the list for quite some time. So a recreation and wellness truck, if it makes it to the new year, and also the railway trestle railings as well. So if you go to the next slide, it shows the 2025 property tax rates. So again, these are the same as 2024, but it shows you by subunit. I'll take this opportunity to say that next year, pending the passing of the recommendation from staff to merge the subunits, we'll have two. So instead of Salisbury V and then four former LSD subunits, we will have two Salisbury V and basically former LSD subunits, which will make it much easier to communicate. And also when we have residents call asking what their tax bill says or doesn't say, it's confusing because it depends on what LSD they're in, and there's all the other provincial elements that add layers of complexity that make it a little bit harder to communicate. So you can see on the far right, after the local government rate and the special provincial levy, they are all within very close proximity of each other. And I mentioned that 78% number, so that will change as we make those the same next year, pending that passing of that motion from council. And then only other thing that I want to raise on this slide is the second to the last column on the right being the special provincial levy. So that has not changed, but that is the rate that is provided to the province, DTI, or provided the province to cover DTI services. So in former LSD, so road maintenance, patching, plowing, ditching, all of those services that are offered by DTI. The column to the left of that, the LG or local government rate, is the rate that comes to the town itself to offer shared services for the municipality.
Are the LSD lights part of the special provincial levy?
No.
Or is it municipal?
Those are municipal, yeah. So the way that our streetlight policy is, gave us basically the formula to calculate for the budget, because the former village has obviously way more streetlights than has. So the way that the streetlight policy that was approved kind of gives us that formula is that the former village pays as a village subunit specific expense for the former village ones, and then for all of those that are in outside, it's shared proportionate per tax base, with the rationale that especially as we continue to add them, one subunit may get more one year versus the other. So they're split, how they'll be split next year when we only have two subunits, former village and then former LSDs, but those show up. This is in transportation. I forget exactly what service area, but I'm quite confident it's transportation. And that's one of the few in transportation other than summer students that are shared. Yeah. Next slide, and then next one again. So going into the utility, this is pretty much the same slide as was done in November, but it's proposing to hold the rate at $400 per unit. Collection efforts are continuing. We'll carry a third and a fourth of deficits from two previous budget years in the utility budget in 2025. And we'll continue to reduce the utility to operating transfer to reflect the true value of basically operation, or the general operating budget time and resources that are allocated to the utility. And if you go to the next slide, this is the next steps that council will consider. So as mentioned, there's a number of resolutions that are being proposed this evening. Then Diane will submit it on the budget portal for provincial review. We will issue the public communications this week with the caveat that it's subject to provincial approval. Generally, the province gives the approval. Last year we had a rounding issue like many municipalities because they rolled out the budget portal, which does not round the same as their Excel tool. So we made sure that we put it in the portal first to make all of these tweaks. And then there are also some recommendations that will propose merging, as mentioned, the former LSD subunits. And also there's the formalities of ratifying the 5-year capital plan and the 5-year CCBF plan, which were discussed in September, I want to say. And we just hold it to the budget to be able to do it all at once. So moving forward, every year when we pass the budget, the utility budget, we'll update our capital plan accordingly based on what was done that particular year. This year we were able to check all of the projects off, and then some. So there aren't any that are being carried over or that are being deferred. But if I use the sludge removal, the treatment plant as an example, that will be reflected next year in the capital plan based on where we end up putting it based on funding that we receive. So with that, in the recommendation sheet, there's a number of them. I think there's 5 in total. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, sorry, motions that are on the floor. I would say for the budget, we pass the first one and then go to questions, or do we want to go to questions first, because some of the motions are more technical, I'm fine with either.
I have a question. We go questions.
On procedure or on one of the
On
areas?
what?
It's one of the areas we should actually get a motion on the floor
Okay.
first and then ask the questions.
Okay, I move that this is to certify that on the 9th day of December twenty twenty-four, the Council of the Local Government of Salisbury resolved that the sum of $7,881,268.93 be the total operating budget for the local government. That the sum of $7,136,219.13 be the warrant of the local government for the ensuing year. And that the tax rate for the local governments be 675.00 Salisbury V is 1.1599. 675.01 Salisbury or Coverdale LD is 0.6335. 675.02 Salisbury LD is 0.6346. 675.03 Moncton LD is 0.6394. 675.04 Elgin Parish LD is 0.6388. The council orders and directs the levying by the Minister of Local Government of said amount on real property liable to taxation under the Assessment Act within the local government of the town of Salisbury. Adopted this 9th of December, 2024 by the Council of the Local Government of Salisbury.
Good job. All in one, all right. Motion by Councillor Bannister, seconded by Councillor Oblinus. Okay, questions to the motion?
So I was curious, how much did the warrant go up? Because, I mean, it's just kind of curious. I mean, obviously that would be, there'd be a lot of things that would be part of that, including, some of the residents that are no longer under the same protection. I mean,
Under spike protection, you mean?
yeah, but
Yeah.
the percentage of the percentage of homes under spike protection could be the same, but you don't get spike protected forever. Like every year, you end up paying a more of a portion.
10%, if you're still under and still max, yeah,
Right.
which is no different. I'm just gonna get that number for you here. I wanna say last year it was 600,000, it will be comparable this year. Let me look to give you the exact numbers. Oops.
Doesn't, a goodly portion of that would be those homes that, okay, they're on their, I don't know, 4th or 5th year of spike protection or
Yeah,
whatever it is.
yeah.
Right? And-
So, and we would have that breakdown too. Let me find that first one and then I'll have that answer as well from Service New Brunswick because we asked that same one. We do see more, we saw more more new growth than most municipalities, even in the southeast. So southeast is disproportionately higher compared to other parts of the province with year over year increases just based on market value, which in our
Right.
case is spike protection.
Right.
Normally, I think the average is about 2.5% new growth. And if the non-residential, for example, in the former Salisbury Village was over 9% this past year. So that's a larger one. I would say that's abnormal. Okay, let me look here. Yeah, so it's 686,776. This is a provincial number, so I have not vetted this, but that is about what it was last year. So that means it makes sense.
Okay.
And then I'll just get that number for 1 year over the other. And the increase in the non-residential in the former village, like I said, is abnormal, but is because there were basically new construction that was not completed in 2024, or that didn't show in 2024, that was completed for the 2025 assessments. So that's the primary reason. Okay.
You can get that to me later unless everybody else.
No, I got it right here. So change to new, I knew it was accessible once I pulled it up. So the change due to, the total change in the tax base is 10.86%. And the change in new construction is only 1.45%. percent of that.
Wow.
Questions?
That's big.
Yeah. And it's very similar to the provincial graphs, if I look back and forth, for the town base, which is very similar. Ours reflects, other than that small abnormality, reflects the southeast almost apples to apples. Yeah.
Additional questions? No additional questions, all in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded, motion carried.
Calm down.
Do I have a? Well,
I will move that council direct administration to notify the Community Finances Branch of the Department of Environment and Local Government, as well as the Department of Finance and the Treasury Board of the town's intent to merge 4 taxation authorities, being 675.01, 675.02, 675.03, and 675.04 for the 2026 fiscal year, and direct administration to prepare the necessary information for the province to prepare for the merging of the taxing authorities to have only 2 taxation subunits within the town.
Second it.
so moved by Councilor Colwell, seconded by Councilor Bannister. Questions to the motion?
Is it really necessary? Can you just not harmonize all
We can, but then the challenge is that if 1 year over another, so let's say, in one of the former LSD subunits, we have one of those abnormalities where the non-residential increases more than the residential, it will mean that that tax base for that subunit will go up more than the other, versus if they're all merged as one authority, it's basically, it's a collective one taxation
the,
authority.
so everyone gets the pain?
Correct,
Or the
yeah,
benefit.
or the benefit, or the benefit. As the former village did this
Normally
year.
go down in general, but that's.
Hey, well, the new government made that promise, so you're gonna fix it all.
The.
That's why she's wearing the hat.
I'm not the only sour one.
The, from a non-residential piece though, that would make a difference from the warrant in the former LSDs, and it's more of a logistical thing, I think. I often use in this case, like the expression of like, we're the envy of other municipalities. Other municipalities are wishing that ours were this close. In a perfect world, we wouldn't have to wait till 2026. We would just make them the same because it's just so much easier. But at least we're not like other municipalities that have like significant gaps between them. Yeah.
Fair enough. I'm curious to know, why can't we make this decision ourselves? Why do we have to actually petition all of the departments necessary?
We don't have to petition, we have to notify them. So for this, their timelines are super prescribed because they have a certain date they're supposed to get us tax-based assessments. We have a certain date to pass the budget. We have a certain date to notify the province. The province, DELG, has a certain date to notify Finance and Treasury Board. They have a certain date to issue tax bill notices and all of that. The assessments for 2026 are done because now they've changed the assessments. So now they're done instead of, it shows, so they're basically going the year prior, basically is what they're doing. So the assessments for 2026's budget year will be starting. We'll be starting in the spring, basically, and summer, to predict, or to no longer predict, because there used to be a gap, basically. So let's say in October, November, and December, the town all across the board boomed. Well, that wouldn't normally be reflected in our tax-based assessment. The way they're changing it now will. So all that is just showing the province that we have the authority to merge, for Diane and I to go back to them and say we have the authority to merge them. And then they do their thing when our assessments come. It won't come to us in 5 subunits. It will come to us in 2. It's more of a logistics thing for them to squeeze in as part of that timeline.
So this isn't their authority to say yes or no, this is just a notification.
Correct, yeah, correct. Yeah, they can't say no to us doing it. It's just the sake of, yeah, it's part of the process for us to get them to do the merge. That's all. Yeah, that's all.
I think it's a great thing.
Keep it simple.
Okay, any additional questions? No additional questions, all in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded, motion carried. Moving on to item number 3. Mr. Colwell.
I was channeling my inner Stephanie.
Gonna share the love after this, though.
I move that
To ensure equitable distribution of costs for fire services provided by other local governments, council direct administration to begin exploring cost-sharing mechanisms with neighboring municipalities that provide fire services to portions of the town of Salisbury to increase predictability and true reflection of service needs for the cost of it.
So moved by Councilor Rowena, seconded by Councilor Colwell. Fast on the draw tonight. With that, any questions? No additional questions, all in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded, motion carried. Moving on to item number 4.
So this is all these motions are all related. So we discussed the utility and all those together, so we can keep going with the,
Okay, I'll do the utility budget.
yeah, not number 4, number 2, right?
Yeah, I'm just reading them. in order.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
It's 8.2, but I'm
Yeah,
just going,
8.2.
this is
Okay.
motion number 4.
Oh, okay, sorry,
Seven
okay.
that we're doing, so
Okay.
it's
I'm
8.2.
gonna read 8.2,
Yeah.
the first one.
Yeah.
Great. I'll move that council of the local government of Salisbury set the annual wastewater disposal rate at $400 per unit for the year 2025 for the wastewater system under the jurisdiction of the council of the local government of Salisbury. So moved.
So moved by Councilor Thorne, seconded by Councilor Rowena. Questions to the motion? No questions. All in favor? Aye. Contrary minded, motion carried.
I move that this is to certify on the 9th day of December 2024. The council of the local government of Salisbury resolved that pursuant to section 117-4 of the Local Governance Act, the total budget for the wastewater utility for the ensuing year would consist of the total revenues of $496,479 and the total expenditures of $496,479. Adopted this 9th day of December 2024 by the council of the local government of Salisbury.
So moved by Councilor Bannister, seconded by Councilor Colwell. Questions to the motion? No questions to the motion. All in favor? Contrary minded, motion carried.
I'll move that the document entitled Salisbury 5-Year Capital Investment Plan for the Canada Community Building Fund CCBF 2024-2028 be adopted.
Second it.
So moved by Councilor Colwell, seconded by Councilor Bannister. Questions to the motion? Seeing no questions to the motion, all in favor? Aye. Contrary minded, motion carried.
I'll move that the 2025 through 2029 5-year capital plan be adopted.
Seconded.
So moved by Councilor Dexter, seconded by Councilor Thorne. Questions to the motion? No questions to the motion, all in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded, motion carried. Okay, moving on to item number 9, bylaws.
So there is one proposed bylaw this evening for first and second reading by title only, which is a bylaw to repeal some of the former Village of Salisbury bylaws that were discussed at Committee of the Whole last month. I'll pass it over to Diane from a process perspective.
Do we wish to proceed? It's what I need a motion on the floor, anybody?
I'll move that yes.
Yeah.
Council of the town of Salisbury give first and second readings of bylaw number 13, a bylaw to repeal numerous bylaws of the former Village of Salisbury by title only.
So moved or second it.
So moved by Councilor Colwell, seconded by Councilor Bannister.
Long night.
Yes. Questions to the motion? No questions to the motion, all in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded, motion carried.
So first reading by title only. It's a bylaw number 13, a bylaw to repeal numerous bylaws of the formal Village of Salisbury. Second reading by title only, a bylaw number 13, a bylaw to repeal numerous bylaws of the former Village of Salisbury.
Job, Diane.
It's a good one.
That's fun.
That was great. All right, with that, we'll move on to item number 10, closed session, labor and employment personnel 61(1)J of the Local Government Act. Contractual 61(1)C of the Local Government Act, covered in fact. Do I have a motion to enter into closed? Moved by Councilor Dexter, seconded by Councilor Colwell. Questions to the motion? No questions to the motion, all in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Seeing none, we now enter into close. Do I have a motion to return back to regular council? So moved by Councillor Tory, seconded by Councillor Dykstra. Questions to the motion? No questions to the motion. We are all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Reminded, we are now back into regular council session. Moving on to item number 11, mayor and councillor statements and inquiries. I just have a couple. I'd like to thank Lori Stewart as well as Salisbury Fire and Rescue for taking on the gathering 150 turkeys after they found out that we would no longer receive turkeys as part of another program. Great initiative. They've exceeded that total tremendously and helping out those in need in the community. So thank you to that. Huge kudos to the staff as well as all the volunteers for the tree lighting event earlier over the last week. It was bar none phenomenal. Kudos, I think, a testament to all the hard work and I think vision of the council. Everything is starting to pay off dividends. So thank you for that. And then just thank you tonight to the RCMP as well as Sammy's Independent Grocery Store and the Lions Club for a Fill the Cruiser event at the grocery store where the outpouring of the public and the donations and the food that was there, they filled up Austin a couple of cruisers, part of the fire truck. It was just a really good field event. So we do have a caring community and it's good to see. So that's all I have.
I'd just like to congratulate the city of Moncton for their economic development award they won, because that was phenomenal to see.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Any additional, no additional items? We'll move on to item number 12, notices of motion and resolutions. Item number 1, land for public purposes, PID number 704-80561.
I will move. The council accept the amount of $2,704 as cash in lieu of land for public purposes for lot 24-2 on the Lynn and Ronald Beckwith subdivision plan as presented by Southeast Regional Services Commission staff report.
Second.
So moved by Councillor Colwell, seconded by Councillor Bannister. Questions to the motion?
What's the story on the 2704? I understand that it's in lieu of land for public purpose, but that seems like a very small amount.
So it's that one parcel, that's being subdivided from a larger parcel. And the staff report kind of outlines basically the calculation for that. So LFPP, when a subdivision or when land is subdivided, it's either 10% of subdivided land that they have to give in actual land. So 10% of 4704 square meters or 8% of market value. So in this case, they're choosing 8% of market value. This is a bit tough to determine market value because there's no real nearby lots that are subdivided like that with that zoning. So they had to take basically 3 in the vicinity and they took the average of all 3 and used that as a price per square meter and then calculated that for the amount being subdivided. So that was the rationale for that specific number.
Lot 24-2, what is the actual square footage of the other square meters or?
4704 square meters.
Okay.
Yeah.
Additional questions? No additional questions? All in favor? Aye. Minded, motion carried. Moving on to item number 2, reappointments to the Salisbury Public Library Board.
I'll move that council reappoint Brenda Lewis and Linda Steves to the Salisbury Public Library Board for 3-year terms retroactive to November 1st, 2024, and concluding on October 31st, 2027.
So moved by
Second.
Councillor Dykstra, seconded by Councillor Bannister. Questions to the motion? No questions to the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Minded, motion carried. With that, moving on to item number 13, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Seconded.
Councillor Blinis, Blinis, seconded by Councillor Bannister. All in favor?
Aye.
Reminded, motion carried. We are adjourned. Congratulations on passing the budget this evening.